What's up, hobby friends? My name is Casey and welcome to another Miniature Rescue. This week, let's talk about what it means and takes to rescue minis. I had made an absolute ton of videos about rescuing Warhammer minis from eBay. Of course, there are a lot of other models from a lot of other places out there, and lots of ways to save them. So today, I want to break down several ways you too can start to save some hobby dollars and restore old miniatures. Now, there are three main places where I like to source quality used minis. And again, mainly Warhammer models because that's what I personally like. But these things apply to pretty much every other model and company out there. eBay is by far my favorite. There are always listings to pour over and new ones that pop up just about every day. Here's some of the ways that I like to sort my searches to find the best deals. Let's start with a basic search. Warhammer is general enough to cover all of the old world, AOS, and of course 40k. The way I like to sort all these listings is by using buy it now, used, and the lowest price first. Then we go to the sidebar and start selecting things like fully assembled and painted, partially assembled and painted, and just for fun, damaged or missing pieces. This will bring our search from over 500,000 to just over 20,000 listings. It's still a ton, but if you want to look in a specific price range or army type, then it can be taken way down. Just depends on what you are personally on the hunt for. With this search, I usually find great deals on models that are perfect for stripping the paint off and just starting over. Great rescues at better than average prices, mainly because the seller doesn't have the time or want to get the model back into a state that would make it either worth more or just ready to paint again. Here's where things can get a little more complicated, but also some things to help. When you want to get the best deals, you need to look for armies or lots. Single minis are great, but they're usually priced pretty high comparatively. I usually put in something like Warhammer Army, painted. That way I get armies and lots that may or may not be connected. The same sorting happens with these listings, except I don't select the sidebar options generally. I feel like most people don't fill in those boxes when they list larger lots or armies, or they don't have that information at all because they found these in an attic or storage unit and are just trying to get rid of them. So it's best not to sort those out of larger lots. From there we can see whether or not anything good comes up. It's way more of a hunt from here because we're generally looking for a good amount of models for not as much money as they would be if they were in something like a start collecting box. Which is a good line of comparison to have, the amount of models for that price new. The thing that makes all of this easier is if you're looking for a specific army, of course, in which case you can start to use these save searches and notifications to really get what you want. When you see results that are in the ballpark of things that you're on the lookout for, but not exactly what you want, you need to save that search and turn on notifications for new listings. You can choose to be notified by email or even text when something new pops up within those search parameters that you set. The best way to get the best deals is to be notified and ready to buy when the moment comes, especially when it comes to buy it now listings. You need to be one of, if not the actual first person to see it and make that decision. Facebook and Craigslist are kind of the same thing. Notifications that go to your email based on keywords will help you land those random deals, so be sure to set them up across multiple platforms. I do want to briefly talk about buy and sell groups because those are great options for local deals, but more importantly, trading opportunities. There are many Facebook groups for buying, selling, and trading, specifically for models. Ask local stores if they have a Discord and allow this as well. You may be surprised to know that there are local scenes that have very active groups, and it's better to be in them than try and compete on something like Facebook Marketplace for finding those deals. There are other sites out there that act like eBay, for example, for used models, most of which I don't use simply because of shipping costs. But if you have a favorite way or site to buy, sell, or trade minis, just leave a link down in the comments and help out your fellow hobbyist. This video has been sponsored by Displate. About a year ago, I moved into this space, and it's taken pretty much every spare moment since then to turn it into a real working studio. Getting paint on the walls, cabinets for displaying minis, and even desks to work on have all been great, but it wasn't until I got some art up on the bare walls that I really felt like we were finally getting somewhere. Displate is about collecting your passions and getting inspired, something a few of us might know a little bit about. And I was absolutely ecstatic when I heard that they were coming out with officially licensed Warhammer plates. I ordered a few, and as expected, they showed up really quickly. They say about 4 to 5 days, which is pretty great. Unboxing a Displate was actually pretty awesome too. Each plate feels like a distinct piece of art, and it comes packaged so that nothing will harm your investment. The unique magnet mounting system was also a pretty good surprise because it was super easy to get these on the wall where I'm pretty sure they're going to end up. But I know if I ever want to move them around the room, I can take them down safely without damaging the walls. Having a collection of art makes this room finally feel like a real hobby space, and with Displate's massive variety of over 1.3 million designs from tons of amazing artists and brands, I'm definitely going to be expanding this collection, making this space feel even better. If you are in need of elevating your hobby room with some fantastic and unique art, check out Displate by clicking the link in the description or in the pinned comment below. Thanks again, Displate, for sponsoring this video. Now let's learn more about what kinds of tools we need in order to actually rescue some minis. So now that we know where and how to source our minis, what do we need to do in order to get them back to a place where they're usable? Let's start by taking a look at what you need in order to make that happen. The supply list is pretty basic, or at least it can be, but here's some of the things that you will definitely need to get started. Gloves, hobby knife for mold line remover, sanding sticks, an old toothbrush, a soft wire brush, a large jar or sealable container, concentrated degreaser, isopropyl alcohol, glue, CA glue remover, acetone, sonic jewelry cleaner, milliput, green stuff, and it's a good idea to keep some paper towels on hand. Most of these products are pretty self-explanatory. The gloves are for the mess you will eventually make. The cleaners are for paint stripping and conveniently cleaning up after that mess. And the hobby tools are basic things you probably already use to build and assemble minis that you have gotten new. I don't want to spend too much time in the weeds here. Most of these tools are things you probably already know about. So I'll just go over a few of the stranger ones. The one thing that stands out as products you might not normally have are things like the toothbrush and wire brush. These don't have to be expensive and are just used for taking paint off models after the strippers begin to soften that paint. I like a toothbrush for pretty much everything, but having a soft wire brush for metal models does make that a lot easier. And if it's soft enough, then it can come in handy on plastic models if you're careful. CA glue remover is kind of another weird one, something you may not usually buy for building models. But a good amount of minis are put together using standard super glue or cyanoacrylate, CA glue for short. And having a debonding agent can save you a ton of time and effort trying to get super glue off of minis or out of details. Freezing a model can work for this as well, and more often than not, a soak in some isopropyl alcohol will get most glue unstuck. But a debonder is great for the tough stuff. If a model was poorly built with plastic glue, then we either need to fill the gaps with milliput or cut the model apart and put it back together as best we can. Those minis are probably the toughest and require being cut into, but they're also great opportunities for doing conversion work, but glass half full is the way to look at some of those. As far as products, those are kind of the outliers, but we can't forget the sonic cleaner and jar. So let's talk about stripping paint and see where those come in. I use a sonic jewelry cleaner with a concentrated household degreaser. The reason that I use this method to strip models over others comes down to speed, volume, and price. Sometimes I strip just a single miniature, and sometimes I strip a lot of miniatures at once. I need to get them clean and ready to go in a timely manner so I can stay on schedule for this channel. It's also very satisfying to throw a mini in the cleaner and have it almost perfect in about 15 minutes. Just feels good no matter what. The price of the degreaser I use is also extremely affordable compared to other types of paint strippers, and that goes a long way in saving money over time, especially if you are doing commissions or lots of projects. Not everyone needs that speed, but the takeaway here is that the heavy-duty degreaser will cut through the paint with or without the sonic cleaner. Let me show you my pickle jar. This thing is perfect for putting a ton of minis in and just letting them soak. They can sit for days or weeks and you don't have to worry about the degreaser damaging the plastic. And all you need to do is scrub them off every few days until you're happy with how much paint has been taken off. In the United States, we have dollar stores, where everything in the store is basically $1 or less, and in most of them you can find a concentrated heavy-duty degreaser called LA's Totally Awesome. The price is low, about $1. And every so often the dollar store will stock a large bottle for the same price, so you're always getting a pretty great deal. It also works better than other degreasers that I've used. This is a go-to stripper and household cleaner for a lot of people in the hobby. It's also available on Amazon and at most home stores. It's just not as cheap as the dollar store. So a concentrated degreaser in a jar is really all you need to strip models. That being said, there are obviously much better ways to do it. There are products made specifically for stripping paint off models that work exactly the way that they say. The issue with those products comes directly down to price. Compared to a cheap degreaser in a jar, the alternatives are just eating into the savings you got when you bought those models used in the first place. If you start to spend money more regularly on paint strippers, then you may as well have just gotten the models new to begin with. What's the point in rescuing them if they cost the same? Even with all that, I know there are a ton of amazing alternative ways to strip paints out there, and lots that are specific to certain parts of the world, certain countries, or methods that people have used for years that just work for them. If you are using something like brake cleaner or Detol, purple power, or whatever it is, help your fellow hobbyists out by leaving links to those products in the comments down below. It should also be noted that not every single model you buy needs to be stripped. About 10% of the time when I get a model, I find that the construction was done pretty well. Mold lines have been removed and the model has a thin coat of maybe only a few colors on it. Something you can easily just paint over with more thin layers and have a pretty good mini on the other side of it. If the details look good and the model is in good shape, then there's no need to strip the paint off. Again though, it's kinda rare, but it definitely happens. The other exceptions to a lot of this is metal models. Metal is very tough, and much harsher and still inexpensive solutions can strip paint in no time. Pretty much any kind of acetone bath for a metal model will get you immediate and fantastic results. No messing about with degreasers or sonic cleaners, and the models will be perfectly fine because they're not made of plastic. So something to keep in mind when buying older minis. Just remember though, and consider this an actual warning, some older metal models came with plastic pieces too, so don't assume the whole thing is made of metal when you dunk it into acetone. Check each piece before you go melting half of your newly acquired mini. Whether or not you're trying to strip older models to practice painting, or you're trying to save a few bucks and stretch that hobby dollar, knowing more about restoring a variety of models is just a good tool to have in your hobby bag. I mentioned earlier that I like to include damaged or broken minis in my searches on eBay. And the reason for that is that I see so many models that just have a small part or a piece missing that can easily be replaced. But since that part is gone or broken, the price is usually way better than buying it new. Fixing broken models is a pretty large part of rescuing minis. Partially because of those damaged minis you get for cheap, but also because you will need to work on those skills if you want to get into full army projects. Every army I've purchased on eBay has been in a somewhat less than stellar state. Of course, I'm looking for that, so it won't apply to everyone, but buying used models on the internet just comes with some caveats. There will be broken models, either put together that way or damaged in shipping. A lot of the times it's shipping. The minis might be someone's first foray into the hobby, and there could be just a plethora of things that are wrong with them. Mold lines, excess plastic glue, super glue, weird gaps, fillers, sand, hair, lots of pet hair, seriously, and who knows what other things have happened to or been done to these models. But getting better at doing conversions to fix broken models and filling gaps with milliput or green stuff will go a long way in helping you take these minis and make them new again. Expect the worst, and you will be surprised more often than not that things are a little bit better than the worst. Buying used models is an entire hobby on its own, and certainly not for everyone, but if you want to save some money, save some minis, and learn to get better at miniatures in general, then I feel like there's no better way to do that. You will run into problems. Sometimes paint won't come off of the model when it just should, but we have a community out there that wants to help, so don't be afraid to ask, and I guarantee that there will be people out there that have been in the same situation, myself included. Rescuing models is just an overall satisfying experience, one that goes beyond simply building a new kit and painting a model. In a lot of cases, there will be history with these used minis. They belong to someone else for who knows how long. I mean, this hobby's been going on for a long time. How many hands have those minis passed through, or how many game tables have they been on? Used models represent a history that we can help keep alive together. We can give models that have been in a drawer a second chance and get them back onto the table. Fix a broken model and make it usable for someone. Not us, we'll sell it to someone else eventually. We can save money, we can learn how to work with our minis in a much more constructive environment, learning skills that will help in lots of other ways when it comes to building and painting models. It also gives you the understanding that paint is not permanent. When you paint a model, you always have the option of starting over. And while I don't completely think that that's something you should do, you still always have a reset button that I can personally attest to. It alleviates the stress of screwing up a paint job on an expensive model. Seriously, a large part of why a lot of us don't paint more minis is simply because we're afraid to put paint down on something that costs quite a bit of money. But when you know how to take that paint off, it kind of makes the idea seem silly. Everything I paint on this channel is purely for fun, education, and preservation. I find models in all sorts of conditions so that I can learn from them and make them worth putting on the table again. Saving money is part of it, but the experience of being able to keep that little piece of history alive and give a model or army of models a point again makes it feel way more worth it to me. I also really enjoy the process, and I feel like it can help us become better hobbyists and miniature painters. I only hope that by making little movies about it, I can help to inspire you and get you to a place in the hobby that you can be happy with. So thank you again for joining me on another Miniature Rescue. If you like something about this video, please consider hitting that like button, sharing this video with your hobby friends, and subscribing for more Miniature Rescues. Once again, I'm Casey, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks again.